joining us today. A big welcome. I think you know the way these things work by now. I'm sure you all attended lots of different webinars, but how we're going to be doing this today, we've got 3 speakers. We'll give a clean run at the presentations, so probably 30 to 40 minutes of presentation and then plenty of time for question and answer. Please do drop your questions in the question and answer box so that we can see them, or in the chat function if you can't find the Q&A. We will try and get through as many questions as we can in the time, but please do ask your questions on any of the comments that you get. The session is being recorded, so it will go up on our YouTube channel in the usual way after the event. So if you have to pop out for any purpose during the session, you can come back to it later and have a look at it on YouTube. And if you drop Yvonne an email, she'll be able to share any of the presentation slides after the event. So if there's something that you've missed or you want to read in more detail, you can come back to her and get a copy of those slides. Just drop her an email through, you know where she is, and we'll get those over to you as soon as possible. So I think that's all by way of housekeeping from me, but just a little bit about the format and nature of this webinar and why we're running it in this way. We get a number of people coming through wanting to speak at events, and often, as you know, we group those around a central theme or a region or something that's you know, that brings those speakers together in a central theme. But actually, oftentimes people want to share an experience about something they're working on or developing that's there for the good of the rail freight sector. And those innovations, whether they are large or small, are of great interest to a lot of our membership. And we just thought, well, why don't we put them all together in a webinar and give people a platform where they can share the work that they're doing, the ideas that they've had, look out for a bit of feedback, or just spread the word, really. And that's what we're doing today. And I think it's a theme that if members like that, we'll work on with some future events. In fact, we're looking at a second one in July as a way of giving people that platform to do it. Of course, if this was real life, where would we be doing this? We'd be doing this in the bar, and we'd all be much happier for that. I'm quite sure, with a nice glass of white wine or whatever in your hand, it all works much better. We can get back to that. I'm afraid we're stuck with webinars, and as it's lunchtime, if you're drinking white, you need to take a long hard look at yourself. Even I've not cracked yet, but nonetheless, we are where we are with the webinar today. So let's get into it then and start to find out some more about, you know, all the exciting development that we've got. Our first speaker today is Andy Cotton, who's the CEO of Powerflow Limited, who's asking us, can operators be greener and save pounds? Spoiler alert, the answer to that is yes. But Andy's now going to talk to us about his business, what you've been up to with some of our other members, and how others might be able to take advantage of that. So thank you very much, Andy, and over to you.
Excellent, Maggie, thank you very much. Fingers crossed this will come up as planned. It is there, I can see it. Where has it disappeared to? It's there, thank you. Right, can everybody see that?
Nope, not yet, Andy. Try again.
No, is it not there?
No.
Okay, we did practice this and it did work.
It did work.
How about that?
No. Not yet.
No, still no. Okay, let's try again.
We did practice this, people. We did practice.
And it did work.
Yeah. There we go.
It didn't like the start thing. Right. So, presentation. We are BG Products and presentation to RFG members. And as Maggie very politely said, can operators be greener and save money? Absolutely, yes. Just to give you a little bit of background, who are BG Products? We are the importers for BG of Great Britain, and BG USA are the market leading automotive company. And we supply to solutions for anything basically from a huge diesel power station down to trucks, marine, trains, etc. In simple terms, if it's running on diesel fuel, it has common known issues, and we have proven restoration solutions. Just a little bit of background to us, massive investment in plant and material. In simple terms, we're a fluid manufacturer, an R&D company. We have worked with and provided solutions for And we work with and sit on US automotive technical advisory boards, including major fleet operators, including the American Trucking Association. And we have these accreditations, laboratory accreditations, product accreditations, ISOs, etc. Why are we presenting? As it says on the left there, because the UK government is becoming more aware of and becoming much greener. We know this decarbonisation is now a buzzword, and they are very interested in bashing those dirty diesel emissions. Rail is coming under that little bit of spotlight, as I'm sure everybody's aware. And it's not to say that it's picking on rail or marine or truck or anything, it's everybody and everything, with the intended phase out of internal combustion engines or the sale of internal combustion engines by 2030. So the headline there was about the high risk of idling diesel engines and NOx emissions, etc. So in simple terms, what are we proposing? Well, we have evidence for, and I'd like to produce and show you a number of things that back up this statement, that we reduce emissions. It's restoring performance. And if you wanted one sentence to walk away, it would be clean engines last longer, clean engines run cleaner, and clean engines run leaner. And what does this mean to you, the operators? Well, simple terms, lower costs. So you have less component issues, less downtime, less recovery, less repair. And these factors add up to extension of engine life and reduced operational costs. We've done this from a number of different industries, a number of different size vehicles and engines. And I will show you the railway engine data at the end of this. But just to give you some background and some evidence of what we've done previously and why we've led our way, making our way into locomotive. In basic terms, this is what enhanced maintenance provides. So you get reduced fuel use and you get restoration of performance and reduced emissions because you have reduced soot levels, reduced wear metals, reduced oxidation, etc. And the benefits being restored compression, restored torque, restored power. Again, extension of engine life, reduced operational costs. Standard maintenance ignores the reality of burning carbon-based fuel. Now, I know that we could get into a long conversation about it, but whilst we have ICE, internal combustion engines, the best and easiest.
Andy, we're losing you a little bit. Do you want to flick your video off and see if that's better? We may have lost you altogether. We'll just give it a second, folks, to see if we can get Andy back. We lost you there, Andy.
Exactly. I've just carried on talking and then told I've lost you.
Do you want to flick your video off? That might just improve your bandwidth.
Okie dokie. Stop video. Can we see that?
We can, yeah.
Okay, so the problems the soot creates are as follows: engine wear and fuel component wear, reduced efficiency and increased emissions. So we state that standard servicing does not and cannot remove carbon from the engine and components. Enhanced servicing will clean injectors, clean piston ring, keep oil cleaner longer and lengthen oil life. Again, preaching to the choir here, everybody knows this. Nobody's going to dispute that on a diesel engine, it requires good injector atomization, good compression, airflow. But the simple bit here is that if one of these is compromised, power and economy goes down. and emissions and soot production goes up, it increases. Engine wear is a problem because soot enters the oil and agglomerates. That means it sticks together and it causes problems like this. And these become harder and harder. And as we know, put carbon under enough pressure, it becomes diamond, which is apparently something like 100,000 times harder than anything else on the planet. So that is just hard carbon particles and causes a lot of wear. And this carbon is what's causing the problem. Now, who says this is important? Well, this is the Worldwide Fuel Charter. It's signed up to by every engine manufacturer in the world. And what they're saying there is that the fuel system is the most critical component, and keep the injectors clean is the most critical part of the fuel system. So to give you a little background on injector cleanliness and pre and post testing, from the Worldwide Fuel Charter, it says cleanliness of injectors become a higher priority because of injection systems. Modern engines, in terms of power, fuel consumption, emissions will depend largely on the cleanliness of the injectors. More information about the injector and the cleanliness, but it's talking about any small, partial or complete blockage of the fine spray holes, and the engine no longer functions as designed. So what does this mean to you as the operator? So I'd like to give you some case studies and some evidence and some illustrations of performance restoration, emission savings, reductions and fuel savings that we could translate across to the railway industry. By illustration, just by happens that we just had our own van, one of our own vans tested. And as you can see there, industry standard EVOSA test passed clean as a whistle. The main picture in the bottom there is a 5-gas analyzer, includes NOx. As you can see, NOx is 0. This is at 127,000 miles. This has been looked after by BG Products, as you can imagine. We also did some marine engines recently. So some pre and post on this Hurricane Marine. It's a big tugboat. But this is pre, this is post. This is what cleaning with BG Products does. And as you can see, the photographs on the right there, restoration in compression. Oil pressure went from 3.7 bar to 6.8. That means more power. That means more torque. That means less fuel at lower revs. We have a number of studies and evidences, including this one that was done totally independently by the University of Poznan in Poland on a Euro 5 200,000 mile bus. As you can see, the monitoring equipment was on board and they replicated the bus's routes for a week, weights, passenger on, off, etc., pre and post BG. And the study results are that you can read for yourselves: reductions in emissions, reductions in output, and reduction in fuel use. We have many, many, many more evidences, so much I can bore you to tears with lots and lots of stuff with pleasure. And as it says, be delighted to present and share that any time. Coming to the railway testing. So this is where we started with BG Products in the USA, and this is for, as it says here, the Dakota Missouri Valley Railroad. And they were initially interested because they had some problems with stack fires causing field fires, causing crops to get burnt by hot carbon coming out of the smokestacks. So they needed to clean them up to stop insurance claims. This is before and after. As you see there, it's an EMD engine. It was factory rated when it was new at 2,500 HP. And before cleanup, it had lost down to 18. After cleanup, we restored back up to 21. So a restoration in horsepower and cleaning. So I'd like to make that very clear. It's been pointed out to me that a lot of people think we're promising that you could turn, for sake of argument, a Peugeot 106 into a Ferrari. No, we can't. You can't do that. All you can do is restore what is supposed to be there. You can only get it back to clean as manufacturers had it. So if I went back to the BG van at 127,000 miles, that's as clean as it was when it came out of the factory. That engine is clean. This is a restoration. But the significant, two bits of significance here are obviously a restoration horsepower, massive reduction in opacity, smokestack, and fuel use reduction. So we took this into the UK. First place we were allowed to go was the QRTC and use one of their shunter they used there. And then subsequently we've been at UKRL in Leicester and their depot there, and we did it on a class 56. So the shunter, as you can see here, this is a couple of years ago, pre-testing and dirty back smoke. And it says there an average of about 50 gallons a week, 25 hours of weekly shunting time. And a month later, after first treatment, no black smoke, and we've halved the emissions. So I know it looked reasonably clean at 2 HCs and CO2 at 2.6 and NOx at 82, but we can see we've H is 0, carbon emissions 1.3, halved, NOx down from 82 to 48. And 2 months later, at idle, no smoke at all, and even under full load, and as you see here, the net results, and I appreciate those are staggering figures, but if you start with a low enough figure, it's not hard to make 100%. And we moved on to UKRL. So we did some testing on 56301, as you can see here, pre and post. And again, I've got huge documentation about this, which I'll share with anybody with pleasure. But again, this is at idle, pre and post testing. You can see significant improvements in reductions on NOx, HCs, CO2. The summary of that for the 56301 reductions, as you see there, and the fuel use, as it says, at idle, well, actually, it was far better than 10%. We think that figure was extraordinarily high and very, very good, obviously. And we're in the process of testing some more vehicle, another train, and repeating testing, because we'd like to, validate what we got the first time, but also get some more data that we would hopefully back up what we know we've got to start with. But the power output was very easily done on load bank testing. So in simple terms, we're producing less emissions, using less fuel, and creating more power, all of which has got to be good, A, for your pocket, and B, for the performance of the engine and lifetime of it. So what does this mean in emissions? Well, this is Department of Transport figures. Every 1,000 litres of fuel burnt produces this many kilos. And what does this mean to you as an operator? Well, environmental savings, bottom line improvements. Can operators be greener and save money? Yes, absolutely. And as an illustration, if I left this with you and you wanted to look at it, these are just not numbers plucked out of the sky, but these are just numbers that would be representative. But as you can see, there is a significant emissions reduction and a significant savings while doing so. To finish this off, just to confirm, we are not talking about taking locomotives out of service, taking engines off the rails. This is to be complementary, done at existing AB exams, etc. Products are pouring, take a few minutes to administer, but the long-term saving will be a significant savings. To remind you, preventative maintenance, enhanced maintenance reduces and improves, restores fuel savings, add up to extension of engine and component life, reduced operational costs whilst lowering emissions. So what we'd like to do is to talk to any other owners or operators here's my contact details. Obviously, Maggie and Yvonne would have those. If anybody would like to find out more or see more evidence or see more data, please feel free to contact us. With the offer is there, we will come and do performance testing, pre and post testing with pleasure. Thank you very much.
Andy, thank you, and thank you for the information. Sorry we couldn't see you, but it was much better with your video off, so thank you for that too. Some really interesting results there, clearly from the tests that you've done, and I know, you know, there's a lot of diesel equipment in the railways, whether that's shunters or locos or indeed handling equipment, so hopefully that's something that will have whetted some appetites. Andy, could you just stop your screen share for me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much. What we'll do, folks, is we will take all three presentations and then come to Q&A, but do drop your questions for me in the Q&A and we will pick them up in due course. Okay, so let us move on to our next speaker, John Adkins, Head of Business Development and Industry Expertise at Belvedere, is going to be talking to us about something completely different, although related, at least in carbon terms, by how we can pass freight trains better on the network in a way that is green and cost effective. So a common theme, although a very different topic. John, thank you very much, and over to you.
Good afternoon. Thank you to the group and for all the members for attending or those listening post-session. So yeah, John Adkins, Head of Business Development for Belvedere, part of the Traxys Group and developers of the Attune timetable planning software and Attune 4C, the control planning software. So yeah, today I want to just touch on finding a safe and reliable freight path that is green and cost effective. The challenge today, I think at the moment, is there's no integrated solution to find a rail path between 2 points on the network that is both feasible with respect to infrastructure constraints, gauge, length, weight, etc., and feasible with respect to timetabling, i.e. not conflicting with other trains. Planners at the moment must use several non-integrated systems and data sources, and that process is reliant on the coordination of several organizations through manual communication and information exchanges. Sometimes, you know, you could be talking 10 days, if not more, to just identify and approve one path across the network. So the solution, ourselves at Belvedere have started a collaboration with the Logistics Institute at the University of Hull, looking at taking two existing pieces of software and bringing them closer together, as well as enhancing both the individual pieces and that bridge. Those two parts are NR+, which is what has been developed by the Logistics Institute, which specialises in finding rail routes that are feasible with respect to rail infrastructure constraints. And what ourselves at Belvedere have developed, the timetable planning software Attune, that creates and maintains railway timetables. And a special USP is providing live conflict detection against the national timetable by providing a digital version of the industry timetable planning rules. This is already in use a number of freight and train operators, as well as at Network Rail. The integration of the two pieces would provide planners with the unique ability to generate rail paths that are feasible with respect to both infrastructure and timetabling constraints. A first in the UK, and something that definitely increases efficiency, decreases processing time, and improves accuracy in the timetabling process, giving you a path that is cost effective, green, potentially not just the actual path itself, but ensuring more paths mean you can deliver goods, etc., spoil on the network rather than potentially taking other modes. And it creates a standardized workflow for the bid offer process. So the actual process itself, so the grey you'll see there is kind of the existing process. So you find a suitable route for your train consist, you find a suitable train time for that service, you bid for that path, and then that path is submitted back to the operator, who may compare it, who'll look at further changes that have been made by Network Rail, and do they work for themselves and the end customer. The second part of that flow chart is actually looking at how this joint piece could work to seamlessly deliver that whole process. So you would start with an end customer working with a freight operator to say, look, this is what we're trying to achieve, and the NR+ smart route finder finding which routes are feasible with respect to the gauge, etc., weight of the service. That would then feed seamlessly in to the Attune planning software, which would look at actually when could you identify a path across the network and what potential conflicts or pinch points do you face. And that could be an iterative process, because actually route A may not be possible, but there might be route B or C, which would allow you to achieve that flow. Once you've got that route and schedule, it would then go into the NR Plus bid management tool and then feed through to Network Rail, who themselves are already using the Attune timetable planning software to deconflict the timetable. And then that could be offered, rejected, proposed amendments, and then that can flow back to the freight operator. And again, that could be a cyclical, and it often is, as people well know, where there'll be lots of iterations to make sure that as much as possible you're getting a path delivered for both the freight operator and the end customer, but also one that is protecting performance and is meets the decision criteria of Network Rail. At this point, I'll just delve into a little bit of detail of some of those steps. So the kind of smart route finder, just a screenshot for you. So it's looking at origin and destination. You provide the train consist. You can specify required via or avoid points, potentially due to crew, etc. And NR Plus will provide the shortest compliant route, although it will show you other options, and in the context of historic routes as well. So it's not just looking at what is possible, it's actually looking at what's been done in the past. So again, to really set you up in finding that optimal route across the network. Once you have that route, you would then feed it into the Attune timetable planning software and create that schedule in one. Because it's sat on top of the industry timetable planning rules, the industry sectional running times, it can automatically validate against those and populate the entire schedule in one click. So it will put all the mandatory timing points, line codes, platform details, etc., rather than having to manually build that schedule, which for planners can be quite time consuming if it's across the network. You then can validate that path with that automated conflict detection that I've just touched on, enabling you to identify a compliant path across the network. As you can see from the screenshots here, you've got train graphs that can quickly identify, it shows conflicts on the train graphs, as well as you're able to move the train, so you can quickly test a number of iterations. And in the bottom right of the screen, you'll see a map. So we provide the entire national infrastructure, but we'll also provide a visualization of the conflict, which as an ex-planner myself, is incredibly valuable to understand. Do I need to retime the service? Do I potentially need to re-platform it, put it onto a different running line? You're able to quickly identify what is the issue and what are the potential solutions. For me, it's been driven by, when I was a planner, I felt very the 80-20. I'd spend 80% of my time identifying issues and potentially only a small amount of time resolving them. And a big drive for me, both personally and professionally, is swapping those around so that the issues are presented to you and you can then spend that time tackling those and working with stakeholders to get the best outcome. Once you have a compliant path, you can then bid it to Network Rail. Again, we've automated that process, so you can just one button, it will compare what you started with, what changes you've made, which you can then provide to Network Rail, rather than having to kind of keep a list of the changes you've made. That report is automatically created for you, as well as the electronic file, which can be submitted to Network Rail. Once Network Rail have done their work, you can then, in one click, import that offer and it will compare to the bid. So at the moment, a lot of planners will spend time going through what's described as F3 prints of the trains, looking for differences and then having to manually update the system, which is time consuming and is open to error, as in any large data input would be. This removes all of that and has been described by a number of people in both the freight and passenger markets as a game changer, because you can just import in and look at those changes. Do I want to accept it? Do I want to amend it, which is you accept the changes but want to further bid to Network Rail, or do you actually want to reject it and then provide information back to Network Rail to say why that doesn't meet the requirements of yourself and or the customer. And then finally, throughout all this process, it's being tracked within the NR Plus bid management tool, which again, hopefully is also making it even more customer focused. So making it clear to to, again, the customer, the freight user, how that bid is being processed by Network Rail. Has it been submitted? Is it in pre-validation, i.e. looking up against the network code? Is it going through safety checks, validation? You can see, if you will, a bit like a Domino's order, that you can see where it is along, so you can manage your own expectations and those who are interested in the path in question. I've kind of gone through that quite quickly, but I was keen kind of just to kind of give a snapshot. Happy to field any questions, happy to provide the presentation and my details, and always happy to discuss the collaboration we're doing, as well as the two individual pieces of software themselves. Thank you very much.
Very much, John. That's really interesting. We'll come to questions in the end, but I'll just ask you one as we switch over. You talk about, you know, Network Rail, and some operators are starting to pick up the Attune software part of that. How widespread is that now at Network Rail?
So at Network Rail, it's in use across a number of routes, both in long-term planning and starting to in short-term planning. We're also doing work of how we can take that system into very short-term planning. So providing the ability to quickly understand, if you put this path in that you want to run perhaps later today, the impact. So I think it's spreading and becoming more and more valuable, both at the operational level, but also at a strategic level. So looking at being used to validate future major timetable changes, like the East Coast recast next May, or longer term projects like Trans-Pennine upgrade. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. That's great. Lovely. Thank you. Well, we'll come to some more questions as we get towards the end. But John, if you could just drop your slides down for me, that'd be lovely. Thank you very much. And we'll come to our final presentation of the three. We've today got Dave Bates, Commercial Manager, and Phil Brown, Business Development Manager from Crow Wolf Engineering, who are going to talk to us about the innovation that they are working on and have been working on with a number of members across decarbonisation and colleagues at Rail Forum Midlands as well, in terms of their decarbonisation work there. So gentlemen, thank you very much for coming on today. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Maggie. Can we all see that?
We can.
Yeah, okay. So CWE then, and our decarbonisation challenge. CWE established over 55 years ago now. The top left, you'll see the front three factories that are our sites in Crowell, which is now Scunthorpe. And then the picture to the right is inside our workshop factory. So yeah, workshop. There's just a flavour of some of our accreditations along the bottom. So we are members of Rail Forum Midlands. We are risk approved, ISO approved, RESAS approved. Okay, just an example of inside then of our workshop facility. In workshop, just some of the stuff we carry out on daily, weekly, monthly basis is daily safety walks, daily 6S inspections, shadow board inspection, in-process inspections, and so on. Really, just to give you guys a brief flavour really of what you'd expect from us doing your works. So our product range: freight rail, we do axle box refurbishment, bogie overhaul, coupler bars repair and overhaul. We do buffer and jaw gears overhaul. So similar then on the passenger front, again, bogie frame repairs, coupler bar repairs and overhaul. And we have an extensive part and components that we supply. We also can manufacture, reverse engineer obsolescent parts as well. Again, some accreditations that support the above are RESAS approval and more recently, ISO 15001 compliant now. So again, a bit about us. We are the market leader for passenger overhaul. We currently refurbish over 70% of the legacy passenger fleets. So the pictures on here are your HST couplers. The picture to the left is how we expect the couplers to arrive once they've done the mileage. Pictures on the right is how we would deliver them. We do many passenger legacy overhaul works, bogies, couplers, buffers, etc. So freight works, Y25 bogie overhaul. An example, we set out bays and try and make the process as lean as possible. We, if there is a specification, we would work to it. If not, we would look to write one up ourselves, getting a third party to approve. We offer comprehensive doc packs for full traceability. We have what we feel is a good established supply chain. We are cost effective, and we can offer timely resolutions to engineering issues, really. So recently for us, we have undertaken a lot of some works with VTG for their buffers. Here we've invested in a vertical press. We've also invested in a load cell. We've now got the processes in place so we can refurb these HHA buffers, replace the springs that you can see on the left-hand side of the picture if needs be, reclaim the wear on the faces if needs be, and then we can perform a characteristic test. So basically bringing the buffer to as it was from new, really. Very similar with the MegaFet bar couplers. Again, a recent process that we've designed and developed. The picture on the bottom left is a horizontal jig that we designed to support the dismantling and assembling of this MegaFet bar. Again, everything is on condition. We'll offer NDT inspection, so we'll MPI all the critical areas of the MegaFet bar and replace or reuse what we can. So some pictures of the hopper buffer project that we're supporting with VTG, end customer being in Romania. We are refurbishing over 160 HHA buffers. So again, putting them through our processes, we're reclaiming the any wear on the faces and also replacing any of the spring pads inside the buffers. So really our proposal to all on this call is offer a refurbishment process and renewal of all your products, from your jaw gears, buffers, bar couplers, bogey frames. The challenge really is to let us manage your pool of buffers. So on the basis, if it is an ad hoc basis where you only require parts exchanging if there is an issue, we can support you with that. So an example of VTG's pool of buffers that we have here, these will all go through our processes and we will refurbish these, and what we can bring back to life, so to speak, back to new, as good as new, we will do so. And then we can offer that straight exchange basis should they incur any issues whilst in transit. So just an example really of our current customers who we're working with, both passenger and freight. So as a summary, we have extensive passenger and freight rolling stock experience. We will offer cost-effective solutions to improve the product life cycle. We have a strong technical support team in place to offer solutions. We can be that complete service and solution provider. We have accreditation on the RESAS front, again, to improve internal processes and just for the reassurance on the quality aspects. We have an excellent supply chain in place, and we will be an excellent supply chain partner. And then fleet refurbishment is where we really want to support you guys and pooling your product so we can have this one pool float, so to speak, of components and offer that to the whole market. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Phil. Thank you. That's really interesting. They say, don't they, every day is a school day, and I've been in the rail freight industry since 2000, and it has never occurred to me until you gentlemen came on board that anybody would be refurbishing buffers, which is obviously a perfectly obvious and sensible thing to be doing. So so there's always interest, isn't there, in something different. How often are these components turning on a wagon fleet?
Again, we've not really looked into the market, but it all depends what we're saying. Not really looked into the market. It all depends on what the freight operator requires really, whether they do have a scheduling in place for replacing the buffers or not. It's really, so we do with passenger at the moment is some customers are on an ad hoc basis where they won't change unless there's a problem, and some don't, some have a set scheduling, so it'll be a case we can offer both really.
Okay, understood. Lovely. Okay, thank you very much. So we've heard from all our three speakers, and we've got time now for some questions and answers. So please do drop some questions through. We've got a couple that are coming in already, and usually what happens is when we start, other people think of things to ask as well. So let's start where we are. Question from Hans de With. Does route planning solution allow parameters such as safety, a certain weight on bridges and such like to be made, for example, if you're transporting hazardous materials? John, I know you've put some comments in the chat, but do you want to just talk through that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And thank you for the question. So yeah, the route planning software kind of combines a number of different information sources, such as the sectional appendix, the load books, RT3973 forms. So yeah, that you can validate at that stage that your route is safe for whichever of that hazardous material is, and then that route is sent. So once you're at the planning stage, not only have you got a compliant path, you know that path has already gone through that stage, rather than at the moment, often it can be the other way around, where you found a path, but actually then it might not be cleared in terms of route. Rather, you'd want to know your route's clear, then I've got a compliant path, then we're good to go.
Oh, and whilst we've got you, John, you spoke a little, in your presentation about the NR Plus software, and I appreciate that that's not your software per se, it's being developed by others, but it comes up a lot in terms of innovation. I know we've got some colleagues from Fraser Nash who've joined the webinar who've used it in another innovation platform, and there are people with a lot of interest in a lot of places of using that digitized basis on which to build further innovation. How do you see that sort of rolling out and moving forward as a platform? Because I think we can all see the value of it. It's just a question of how it gets kind of best built into the future, if you like.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think digitization of information is a great place to be. I think for so long, a lot of these tasks are manual and they just don't need to be if you can digitize them and automate the process. So I think we're very supportive. We've done the same with TPR data. We're looking to do the same with possession data. So we're in a similar space. So I think for NR Plus, I think they're now doing, I think it's about working with different parties. So I think working, but understanding how can they fit in the process and potentially what's the benefit of having kind of closer aligned systems. And that also fits with the industry timetable technical strategy document that was recently published by Network Rail after lengthy consultation. And that supports that as well. It's about how these systems talk to each other. A lot of what we learned from A18 is about actually, if we can remove data flows, and that's what we're trying to achieve here and with other people we're innovating with, is so you can just, it seamlessly works through the process. People can intervene where they require, but you're not moving data around, which can be time consuming and has high risk.
And sort of linked to that then, is the data that's being digitized itself fit for purpose? When you're running a tune, are you finding anomalies in that data?
I think data maintenance is a very, very good point. It has to be maintained. So I think you're right. I think not just having the software, it's actually having the relevant industry partners committed to updating that data and keeping it maintained. I think some of the route information, there's more work to be done to digitize it and agree who will maintain it. I think we've done a lot of work with the TPRs. I think they are at a good level of accuracy. I think often some of the debate is due to more interpretation, because when it was two humans doing it, me and yourself could have a different interpretation, it didn't matter. But when a system's evaluating it, there's got to be a single interpretation. What does that headway mean? What does that junction margin mean? And I think it's great now that actually a lot of the calls we get diverted into a conversation between the freight operator and Network Rail, because it's not our place to decide that. But actually, if it's getting those conversations, say, what does it actually mean? That's brilliant, because there should only be one source of the truth. It should be, how close can those trains be at location X?
Cool. Without hogging, I have got some questions, gentlemen, for you as well. So don't think I'm letting you off the hook here. But whilst I'm hogging John, but one of the phrases that's buzzing around in freight at the moment is energy efficient timetabling. Because the work that's being done on decarbonisation, in the broadest sense, is showing that the sort of the carbon price that comes from stopping and starting freight trains on their journeys, or not being able to run them at the optimal length sometimes. And whilst obviously some of this is, I suppose, about policy choices between passenger and freight and journey time versus capacity and some of those things, it feels to me that there are places on the margin where we simply can't actually test what the impact would be of, say, not looping a freight train and keeping it going, or holding a passenger train, or that. Does the combination then of NR Plus and the tune give a route to start to look at that?
I think you preempted very well. I feel like even in some of our conversations, we are looking at that. So actually looking at, carbon counting, actually looking at what's the impact. And the other benefit of this is if the planner's got more time, they can start to think about, actually, if I put it in this loop, what's the consequences? And I think a lot of times planners they don't have the time, the bandwidth to think about it. And you're absolutely right. You want to keep that freight train moving. And actually, if you've got the time to look at option B, C, D, E, F, you might actually find a better one than you would have found if you were taking a short period of time. So I think both, it gives more planners to find a better solution, but then actually longer term, we could start to look at actually not just how compliant a train is, but actually how green it is.
Yeah, brilliant. Because I think that's where we have to go. I mean, everything about carbon tells me that's where we've got to go. Yeah.
Agreed.
And Andy, just talking about carbon, obviously some really impressive results coming from the tests that you've done. How dirty does an engine need to be before you start to get those kinds of results?
I suppose that depends on the workload and the way it's being used and operated and what type of engine it is. And, for sake of argument, you took a generator that sits there and just puddles over slowly, and it builds up very, very quickly. If you've got something on a main line going at 100 miles an hour, it builds up a lot less quickly. But the answer I give everybody to that type of question is, at what point did you decide it was the right time to look after your newborn baby? Was it, when it got to 13 or 14, or did you, perhaps think, well, actually, we'll start now? So you're absolutely right. It's a very good question. It's one we get asked all the time. And simple truth is that what we've seen and believed and people have wanted to have has been that it's almost a throwaway business. It isn't with a very expensive locomotive engine, but basically people have been conned into believing by manufacturers that the next one they get will be cleaner and leaner and better and cheaper, and that all they've got to do is change it over and get another one. And that's very true for the manufacturers, because that is the manufacturer's business. But we are now in a position where ICE are being phased out by the government. So obviously, the bigger the engine, the less quickly that's going to happen, and the less resources and repair facilities and people available to look after them. So actually, as the end of tail of life gets longer and extended, because people want the vehicle or the engine or the locomotive or the power station, whatever it is, to maximize their return on investment, the longer you look after it, the sooner you start looking after it, the better.
And in terms of the business case for people, I mean, I wouldn't ask or expect you to give me commercial information here, but in terms of a business case against, what it costs to use your product on a regular basis versus the returns you're getting, I mean, it sounds like a no-brainer, but is it? Am I missing something?
No, the numbers are absolutely there. It is a no-brainer. If we had a simple return on investment of 100%, nobody's ever going to balk at that. And it would be far better than that. It would be far greater return on investment than that. So, what we know is that, again, let's just give it in simple percentage terms, that if over a period of time it's a 1% cost, you would be looking at a 3 or 4% saving minimum. And the reason why I said in that presentation about the fuel use at idle reduced by more than 10% is, well, that's phenomenal. That really is an extraordinarily good number. And we'd love to trumpet that, which is why we're retesting and doing more train testing.
And we've got some members now looking at alternative fuels, again, not to replace the long-term need for, more electrification and biomodes and so on, but, looking at things like hydrolyzed vegetable oil and things like that. And does your product range cover those kind of fuels as well?
Yeah, it does. Not exactly the same way, because it depends on the type of fuel, it depends on type of use. But if nothing else, then the lubricated parts need to be looked after. So whether that's be the actual engine components or the lubricated injectors, et cetera, they still need to be looked after. So yes, there would be There would be differences in application, differences in what we'd recommend, but the principle remains the same, that you burn something, it creates deposit, and it's that deposit that causes the problem. So irrespective of what it is you're putting through the system, there are consequences. And the most basic difference is that the calorific output of whatever it is you're putting through is lower than you would have. So for sake of argument, on a biodiesel, you're talking about vegetable oils or whatever like this, that will reduce the calorific output and therefore the work achievable by that engine by 2, 3, 4, 5%. So whatever happens, you're using more of it to get the same result. So if you then get it dirtier and it's less efficient, you've multiplied that problem.
Phil and Dave, explain to us a little bit more about the pooling of buffers and how you'd imagine that working as you move forward.
We understand that there has been vehicles that has retired, so to speak, been scrapped. So we do know there is a lot of spares out there that we could pull, and it's just a case of putting them through our process really, so we can reclaim, overhaul them, so the back to drawing and the performance side and the characteristics of the buffer is as good as new. We know that there is so to speak a shelf life on some of these cartridges that sit inside these buffers, that really are saying that they are ready to be recharged. They might not be performing as well as they should be, and sort of like it'll be I see it encouraging for the operating groups if they can look at scheduling refurbishment of these buffers and trying to, not wait for them to break, so to speak.
And I think also from a logistics point of view, this puts a pool of product there for all the freight operators, thus not having to purchase new and procuring parts from, all over the globe, basically. So basically just reducing the carbon footprint on the supply chain.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we're at some very early conversations in Europe, not so much in the UK, about, digital couplers and what the future on new wagons might look like. And I think, there's a long way to go on those conversations yet. So probably not necessarily arriving anytime soon. And colleagues thinking about what that sort of half and half is, so that you can, improve the digitization and the connectivity of the train without having to rip off existing couplers and buffers and doing that. So it feels like that there's definitely, a long space ahead. To what extent have you been able to get engagement with the wagon businesses? Because obviously many of those own and lease those products, as well as the freight operators themselves.
So our main customer at the moment is VTG.
Yep.
So the stuff that we've done in the freight market, mainly around the buffers, has been for VTG. Okay. And what our next challenge really is to sort of say to them what buffer's compatible with other buffers, so we can start sort of getting to or reducing the types of buffers that makes it easier to manage moving forward.
Yeah. So probably offline from here, if we can have a chat, and because quite a lot of our members in the wagon sector, other companies as well, and indeed some of the customers who own and operate their own wagons. Yeah. As well as so let's pick that up offline and make sure that I'm sure you have got all the right names, but let's do a double check and
thanks for that.
Yeah, we can make those connections across as well. So an open question then, I guess, to all of you, which is obviously, what happens next, and what do you need next to sort of go to the next stage? I mean, obviously, I appreciate the simple answer is for customers to approach you and want to talk more, but what else would help you unlock these innovations and get them out and into the market?
I think from our perspective as a company, Maggie, it's these sort of platforms help to get engaged, and like you just said, you haven't got everybody on this call, but we see yourselves as facilitators of putting us in touch with the industry, basically, and discussing that as a collective.
Yeah, cool. And certainly, as I said at the beginning, we'll, this doesn't just stop here. We'll be on YouTube with it, and it'll be in our newsletter and various other things as well. So, we'll do that. But I'll follow up these specifically offline. Yeah, thank you. Andy and John, from your side.
Yeah, I would echo the call for engagement. Like Anne touched on, happy to provide demonstrations, allow people to get their hands on the software for a few weeks. We offer that because we know convincing yourself is often the biggest thing. But yeah, I think engaging, thinking about it, talking to people ourselves, but people in the industry about actually how we get this across the line, how we maintain data, thinking about those issues, and getting your voice heard as early as possible.
Yeah, brilliant.
Maggie, thank you. I guess the comment has been made, and it is absolutely true that the wider the audience, the more people that we get to talk to, the more people that get, as John says, get a free trial and an opportunity to experience for themselves. The more converts you get. I'm sure we're all in the same position, which is that we know what we've proven, and everybody basically is a skeptic. So that's fair enough. It's for us to have the opportunity to talk to and explain. And as John said quite correctly, once you've used it yourself, seeing is believing. So yes, thank you very much for the opportunity and the platform for the engagement.
Brilliant. And one final comment here from Hans, and apologies, Hans, I should have picked this up earlier, but in terms of the reminder that there are lots of innovation projects funding out there, and I know several of you, or at least two of you on there, have participated in various innovation projects away. And Hans's business Avinto, which is linked into the European Space Agency, a rail freight program, is also underway. So if you want to get in touch with Hans around that, again, we can share his details. They're looking at bringing rail freight into the space age, I think, or as dark age into the space age, perhaps. But some really interesting stuff there. Actually, John, it might be interesting for you, I think, because of the sort of the tie-up with that sort of routing and placement piece. So I'll make that connection for you afterwards as well.
Thank you very much. That'd be brilliant.
Take that from there. Lovely. All right, we are right on time. As Andy said, you start looking after your newborn children the day they're born, but I've just left mine to make their own lunch. I can hear them banging around in the kitchen, which reminds us it must be time to wrap up and go and get a sandwich. So it just falls to me then to say a huge thank you to all of you. We can't even do virtual rounds of applauses properly, but thank you so much for taking the time. 3 really interesting presentations on different topics, but areas where, we can see huge opportunities, I think, for people to participate and get value from the projects. Thank you to those of you who joined and listened in. As I said, we will, if you want a copy of any of the slides, please give Yvonne a shout and she'll get those over to you later in the week. Recording link will circulate to you all anyway as well, so you can put back on that. And hopefully see some of you in a couple of weeks for cybersecurity, and just keep an eye out on the programme, because we're aiming for one or two a month in our webinar programme. If you think of something that you would like us to cover in a webinar programme, a topic that's interesting to you that we haven't touched, please do get in touch. We're always happy to put something on. Now we know how to do it. It's quite straightforward, and always looking for interesting themes and topics. So please give us a shout. Thank you all again very much, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Cheers now.